In the Alliance Leaders' Hall, the air was heavy with snow falling softly outside. Tian Hejin, the revered leader of the Alliance, sat in contemplation. By his side stood his trusted advisor, Gal Saryang, and his loyal escort warrior, Baekpyo. Saryang broke the silence, commenting on the snow and addressing Baekpyo with a light-hearted remark about his child enjoying the weather. Baekpyo agreed, imagining his child leaping in joy amidst the snowfall. Tian, joining the conversation, asked if Baekpyo's child had turned 3 that year. A brief pause followed before Baekpyo hesitantly corrected him, stating that his child was already 6. Surprised, Tian reflected aloud on how much time had slipped past him. Saryang interjected gently, reminding Tian that he had asked the same question just a few days earlier. This revelation seemed to unsettle Tian, as he silently acknowledged how frequently such lapses occurred lately. He pondered inwardly about his waning memory, and resolved to buy Baekpyo's child some clothes as a gesture of affection. However, his thoughts grew foggy, and he couldn't even recall whether Baekpyo's child was a boy or a girl. Saryang noticed his leader's troubled demeanor, and asked if he was feeling all right. Tian dismissed the concern with a faint smile, attributing his forgetfulness to old age. Saryang reassured him, insisting that he was still healthy. Yet Tian's mind wandered to the passing decades, recalling his 40 years as the world's strongest and the responsibilities that had defined his life. Rising from his chair, Tian addressed Saryang with an unexpected question: what kind of person he was. Saryang appeared puzzled but quickly responded, affirming that Tian was the greatest figure in Jianghu. Tian's expression was thoughtful as he absorbed the answer, his introspection a quiet testament to the burdens he carried as both a leader and a man navigating the inevitable march of time. Tian Hejin sat in his hall, the weight of his memories pressing heavily on his shoulders. Gal Saryang's words still echoed in his mind: he was the greatest person in Jianghu. Tian reflected silently on his legacy, his title, and the life he had led. He remembered the name that had resounded across the martial world, Martial Master Tian Hejin. It was a name he had earned after bringing the Sword Emperor, Blade Emperor, and Fist King to their knees at just 29. By his 30s, Tian had taken the mantle of the Murim Alliance leader, uniting the martial world against the forces of chaos. He had spent years battling the unorthodox sects, shattering the Dark Path 13 Syndicate, and obliterating the Blood Heaven Divine Cult. Each victory had been a step toward fulfilling the Alliance's long-cherished dream, preserving peace in Jianghu. Yet peace had not come without cost. Tian's thoughts darkened as he recalled the betrayals that followed. Those who craved power above all else had poisoned his food and sent assassins to claim his life in the dead of night. But he had survived, cutting down every traitor who dared rebel. The people of Jianghu had called him the Iron-Blooded Alliance Leader, and the Alliance Leader of Punishment, for his unyielding justice. He then urged them both to return home. Baekpyo hesitated, but Tian insisted. "You haven't been home in days," he said. "There's no need to escort me tonight." Reluctantly, Saryang and Baekpyo bowed and left, wishing their leader a peaceful rest. Alone at last, Tian's thoughts grew heavier. Jianghu itself, he mused. For anyone born in Jianghu, achieving all that he had would leave nothing more to wish for. Yet, his chest heaved as his breaths grew labored. His fierce life replayed in his mind like the final moments of a storm. He sat there, a man who had conquered enemies, united a fractured world, and upheld peace for decades, yet now burdened by an inexplicable fatigue. The world saw him as the embodiment of strength, but Tian Hejin was no longer sure if he felt it within himself. Tian Hejin, the once mighty alliance leader, suddenly clutched his chest and collapsed to the floor. A sharp pain pierced his heart, and confusion clouded his thoughts. "What's this, all of a sudden?" He managed to think before darkness overtook him. When his eyes opened again, the surroundings were unfamiliar. The faint scent of medicinal herbs filled the air, and he realized he was lying in what seemed to be a medical room. A woman and a young girl stood nearby. Tian's mind raced as he tried to make sense of the situation. "Did I faint?" he thought, half expecting his advisor Gal Saryang to appear and chastise him for neglecting his health. But what truly unsettled him was the shocking discovery that his dantian, the core of his martial strength, was completely empty. "Qi dispersing poison?" he wondered in disbelief. It seemed impossible. No such poison should have been effective against someone of his stature. Just then, the woman spoke, pulling his attention back to the present. "You're awake," she said gently. "Are you all right?" Tian, still reeling, asked weakly. "Who are you?" His voice sounded foreign, strange even to himself. The woman's expression darkened, and her tone became incredulous. "Did you seriously just ask who I am?" she demanded. Tian confirmed. "That's correct." Her frustration grew, and she shouted, "You unfilial brat! I'm your mother!" Tian's confusion deepened as the woman berated him, her anger unchecked until the person behind her tried to calm her down. "Please hold it in," they urged, pulling her back. "It seems he hasn't regained his senses yet." Still, her fury barely subsided as she shouted, "Ungrateful brat! I spent the entire night worrying about you." Tian, now overwhelmed, could only wonder. Is this a dream? It must be. Otherwise, looking into a nearby mirror, his heart sank. The reflection staring back at him was not the imposing figure of the Alliance leader he knew but his younger self. Thin and frail, this body was decades away from the prime of his life. "This is me?" he whispered, barely believing it. "I knew it! This has to be a dream." But as the minutes passed, he realized that the vividness of this experience couldn't simply be dismissed. "It's not a dream," he concluded grimly. "No matter how deeply I fall into a dream, I've never been unable to tell it apart from reality." By the time the sun was nearing the horizon, Tian remained on the mat, his mind racing to piece together the puzzle. This wasn't chi deviation or some illness. It was something beyond the bounds of his 70 years of experience. The memories of his life as Tian Hejin, the Alliance leader, were intact. But now, in this young and unfamiliar body, he could only ask himself one question. Is this reincarnation? After regaining consciousness, the former Alliance leader Tian, bedridden due to illness, was confronted by an older man. The man berated him harshly, expressing his disappointment and calling him a disgrace. Tian, still disoriented, insisted that he could not remember anything. Internally, he grappled with the truth. He truly knew nothing about the life of this young man accusing him. The older man, unimpressed, accused Tian of being irresponsible, a sharp criticism that stung deeply. Tian responded by defending his past leadership, recalling how he had always been just with rewards and punishments, faced difficulties without excuses, avoided relying on others' loyalty, and shouldered his duties. Yet now, he found himself labeled as irresponsible. The older man, clearly exasperated, left the room with a final cutting remark about Tian being a disgrace to the family. Left alone, Tian wondered what could have happened during his unconsciousness to elicit such animosity. His contemplation was interrupted when a younger man entered. This newcomer greeted Tian casually, commenting that he had warned him about failing even against a woman. The younger man then chastised Tian for his compulsive drinking. Confused, Tian asked bluntly, "Who are you again?" This question only earned him suspicion, as the young man accused him of feigning memory loss. The young man, Guangtu, alternated between criticizing Tian for his actions and advising him to use this opportunity to practice martial arts more seriously. Tian tried to ask a final question, but Guangtu hastily interrupted, introducing himself again and begging Tian to drop the pretense of amnesia. His frustration was clear, and he left Tian to ponder his current predicament, bewildered by the treatment he was receiving. As Tian lay weakly on the mat, he turned to the boy and asked, puzzled, "Guangtu? Nuts head?" The boy immediately corrected him, explaining that his name meant bright head, and that Nuts head was just a mocking nickname Tian had coined to tease him. Confused, Tian responded earnestly, "I really don't remember anything." The boy, skeptical, insisted Tian was pretending. Despite his repeated denials and a solemn insistence on being serious, Guangtu remained unconvinced. Eventually, the boy decided to test him. "Do you remember the money I lent you before?" he asked. Tian, bewildered, replied, "No." "How much was it?" Guangtu informed him it was 2 taels, and Tian, rummaging through his belongings, found the money and handed it over without hesitation. Guangtu froze in shock. "Unbelievable! It looks like you really lost your memories." His sudden shift in tone surprised Tian, who questioned why he now believed him. Guangtu explained bluntly. Because you're the kind of person who never pays back the money you borrow. Tian, struck by this revelation, was left questioning himself. What? I don't pay back the money I borrow? Inwardly, he pondered, who on earth is this guy? And what kind of life have I led for everyone to treat me like this? Guangtu offered to recount his past misdeeds, but Tian, sensing an avalanche of shame, stopped him. Instead, he asked, from the most recent one. Why did I get hurt? Guangtu didn't hold back. You went to see Lady Song, got rejected, started speaking rudely to her, and she beat you. Furious, you drank alone and ended up collapsing. Lady Song? Tian asked, the name unfamiliar. Guangtu's astonishment was palpable. You don't even remember her? Lady Song Hualin, the successor of the Song family. Tian's mind spun as he tried to piece together the life he couldn't remember. Guangtu continued to describe Lady Song with admiration, calling her the most beautiful woman in Shandong. He spoke of her strength and intelligence, noting that she was perfect in many ways, but with one fatal flaw, the fact that she was engaged to Tian. Tian, surprised, asked, That's her fatal weakness? Guangtu nodded, explaining that her misfortune arose because of the arranged marriage, which had doomed her to be tied to someone like him. Tian, still trying to piece together his past, asked sarcastically if he had ever hit Guangtu. The boy laughed and responded, No, but why do you ask that? Tian, with a strange itch in his hand, muttered that he felt like hitting him for some reason. Guangtu, unperturbed, joked about the strong bond between them, suggesting that it was even more powerful than an arranged marriage. As the conversation shifted to Tian's past mistakes, he grew agitated. He asked, What about the accident before all this? Guangtu answered without hesitation, listing Tian's failures: losing a lot of money gambling, falling in love with a courtesan, and getting into countless fights. Tian had also run away from home, refusing to practice martial arts, and made a scene about wanting to make a name for himself in Jianghu. Enough! Tian snapped, the memories overwhelming him. He thought bitterly, how could I have been such a mess? And only received a single slap from my mother? If he had been in her place, he would have beaten him nearly to death. He turned to Guangtu, his mind still racing, and asked, What kind of person was I to you? Guangtu, without missing a beat, replied, Can I be honest? Tian encouraged him to speak freely, urging him, This is your chance. The boy wasted no time, responding bluntly, You were trash. Tian froze, the word cutting deep. As he lay on the mat, he realized just how much he had fallen from grace. In his mind, he thought, trash, huh? He now understood the full weight of his past mistakes. Looks like I really died and came back to life, he thought, reflecting on how far he had fallen.